Well, hello, everyone. I cannot tell people how absolutely excited I am right now. So it is my Mondays, and I like to get together with friends who are also readers, empaths, remote viewers, and I'm so excited. Today, I'm going to be interviewing the amazing Dianne from Dianne's Tarot. Hi, Dianne. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Whimsy. Thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it. I'm excited.
Last night I was thinking about this interview. I literally had trouble falling asleep. I felt like it was Christmas.
Oh, I'll take that as a really beautiful compliment.
I can't. I'm really excited. So, if you haven't checked out Diane's channel yet, it's simply called Diane's Tarot. And Diane, first things first, can you tell people what it is? Excuse me, what you do for a living, like what you're
So,
working.
what I do now, because I used to be a dementia practitioner, which literally was making me sick to be in that system, not to work with the patients because I loved my dementia patients, but just to work in that system, in that corporate world where you were dealing with putting numbers on people's well-being, and I really couldn't do that. And so I ended up leaving that. I went to Cambodia for a year. I was an English teacher over there, and I came back and my mother wasn't well. And so I quickly realized, well, I need to do something that I can do in this home, that I can, give my mother the attention that she needs. And what I decided to do was really just turn back to my roots of spirituality, because I never really abandoned them. But when I was in that job that I just didn't care for, it really stole all of my energy, which is partially my fault, because I was going along with it. And so what I've been doing now for the last few years is working as a reader. I read tarot cards, I do psychic readings, and I also teach how to read tarot cards, how to do meditation, how to invoke angels. I just got done teaching an empath series, and now I'm teaching about channeling, how to channel your spirit guides and your angels. So I would say a reader and a teacher.
Wow, you've got your hands full,
I
Diane.
do.
Okay, I think this is probably one of the most common questions that I get asked, and I'm pretty sure other readers get asked the same question. When did you know that you could do this? That you could,
I I knew I was different when I was 3. I knew that my experiences were different than my brothers and sisters and my parents, because they seemed like they were very much here in the house, in the world. And I felt like I only had one foot here, because I kept jumping out of my body and getting onto the astral plane. And so I knew something was a little different. I also knew that I could read my mother's thoughts, and I knew that I could send her thoughts. And then I came to the realization, if I just thought, like, okay, I want a glass of milk, she would just get up and get me a glass of milk. And I didn't have to say anything. But it seemed like my brothers and sisters weren't that way. So I knew something was a little different when I was like 3.
Mhm. Do you attribute any particular event or experience to being that way at 3? Was there an event or an experience?
I think, first of all, let me just say, I am really lucky that I have a loving family. I had a good childhood. And even though I always say to my viewers, I don't come from a new agey family. I don't. They're very staunch. They didn't discourage me either. And so it was a lot of, okay, Diane's being Dianne. But I do remember there was this one time when I was about 3, and I'm the youngest by a lot. My parents had children over the span of 21 years. So, like, my older siblings were a lot older. And so it was a Saturday night, and they all got to stay up and watch a scary movie, and they got to have soda and popcorn, and I had to go to bed. And I was so upset about that. I thought it was such an injustice. And so my mom's putting me in bed, and I said, "You can't make me stay in bed." And she said, "Well, you better stay in bed. It's time for you to go to sleep." And I was like, I'm not staying. And so what I realized was, I don't have to really stay in bed. My body can stay there, but I can pop out. And that's exactly what I did. It was like my first astral projection that I did on purpose was like out of spite. I was irritated. I was 3. I was angry. And so I went down the stairs. The first thing I saw was my dad doing something that my mom hated him doing, which was standing up and eating over the counter, because in her world, you sit down when you eat. And there he was eating an apple. And so then I just kind of floated through the dining room into the living room. And I could see that everyone was drinking Pepsi. They had 3 bowls of popcorn. Our Pomeranian was there. And then I went back to bed. So the next morning, I said to my mom, I got to see everything. And you know what? Dad was standing up eating an apple. And my father was like, what were you doing sneaking around the house? I'm like, So that's like my first real memory of doing something that is paranormal, I guess.
And you don't remember being scared or anything like that?
No, I loved astral projection. Loved it. And I did it all the time. It didn't scare me. It felt very natural to me.
Hmm. And when was the first time you saw beings? Beings that, you know, ghosts or spirits? When was the first time you had an experience like that? Can you remember?
3. It's like everything seemed to happen when I was 3. I do not have memories prior to being 3. And I know, you know, like if you study child psychology, they say that's because language isn't developed and they've made the connection between language and memory. But if you've ever owned a pet, you know, they don't speak a human language or even really too much of any language, but yet they still clearly have memories. So I don't know if that's really it, or if it just maybe my soul really didn't get into my body until I was about 3, because I have no memories prior to that. So when I was 3, it's like a light bulb got turned on. And I think that's when my soul really entered my body. And that's when I started this incarnation. But I had a lot of paranormal experiences. Some were good, some were bad. It did make me, as I got a little bit older, turn off my clairvoyance of actually seeing beings with my own 2 eyes, because I was seeing them so much that some of them weren't good. Some just came with this house. This house is from the 1700s.
Can you talk a little bit about that, like some of the beings you had contacts with, or?
We had the stereotypical shadow people in this house before I learned how to, and this is why I started working with angels as a teenager, because I needed to clear these things out of the house. I couldn't live with them. And so we had the shadow people, and they are scary. They do things like hold you down in bed, and they just lay on top of you, and they make it hard to breathe, you know. And I know some people say, well, that's like sleep paralysis. But if you have sleep paralysis, you're not seeing a being holding you down. That's not a biological, you know, occurrence. But we also had the Hat Man, that once again stereotypical Hat Man, where he's like a dark shadow with the hat, almost like an Abraham Lincoln sort of being.
Well, if you're hanging out in this channel, I was thinking more the Mad Hatter.
He would sit on my bed at night, and I didn't like that. But then I also had lots of really wonderful experiences too, of like angelic beings coming and good extraterrestrials. So that was about the same time that I had my first real extraterrestrial experience. And I know a lot of,
you have to tell us about the good angel and the good extraterrestrial now, because you told us the bad.
Yeah, the bad ones are scary.
And time on his hand.
Angels would just sort of come in and out of my bedroom at night. I never really saw a lot during the day usually, but it was more like at night, and they just looked like kind of like outlines of beings that were like a golden white light. And sometimes you could see a little bit of wings on them, and they would just make me feel love. It was like an overwhelming sense of love. And with the extraterrestrials, that was a really interesting experience. They did take me. I'm not quite sure where I ended up, but they were very kind.
Were you? How old were you when you had your quote unquote abduction experience?
About 3. Yeah, maybe as late as 4, but 3 or 4. And they did something medical to me but it was good because I had horrible allergies to everything on the planet. I remember when I went to kindergarten, I heard other kids talking about having play clothes. So I come home and I asked my mom, and I was like, why don't I have play clothes? And she said, because you don't get dirty. And it's like, well, yeah, I don't get dirty because I'm allergic to dirt. I'm allergic to the grass. I'm allergic to the trees. I'm allergic to the flowers. So, I mean, the very first time I touched dirt was just trying to help my mom wash potatoes. And I will never forget that pain of touching the dirt. Anything that's native to this planet just causes inflammation. It is so painful. But I think looking back as an adult, what happened with the extraterrestrial experience is that they made life on this planet more tolerable for me. They adjusted my DNA so I wasn't quite so allergic to everything. So, and they were smiling, they were kind. They were very, very short, but they weren't the short grays. I've actually never seen this species ever again. I don't know who they are. But they were very, very kind. And I know people always talk about the really bad experiences, but that's never been my experience with extraterrestrials, fortunately.
Wow. And so do you think that these beings, because I know people who have taken medicines like ayahuasca talk about making contact with beings. Do you think they live in a different, a world that's parallel to this one in another dimension? Is that why? Or they can pop in, they're interdimensional. I mean, like, what do you think that is? What do you think these consciousnesses are? Is it us in the future? I mean, like.
Well, you can never rule that out, right? But what I would say is, because I teach the law of one from the Rock Collective, is that they are of a higher consciousness or density. And to me, they felt like fifth or sixth density. Angels would be the sixth density. Pure consciousness is seventh density. The Ra that I channel is sixth density. They feel like more like fifth or sixth density. So they're just of a higher consciousness. And it's not that they're necessarily in a completely different place, as they just have the technology to get here. Everything that I have seen from extraterrestrials makes perfect sense. And it makes me not really believe in magic. What I think magic is just science that we don't have words for yet. Everything that I've seen really just goes right back to, we live in a very mathematical and scientific universe. Mm-hmm. None of this is woo-woo. There is nothing touchy-feely about what I'm seeing. When I asked the Rock Collective, how is it that I am able to communicate with you? They showed me what I call an iPod chair. And it has like amazing capabilities. They sit in it, they put their fingertips on the armrests, and it somehow telepathically connects us. Sort of in the way that we have gone from picking up a phone, to actually making a call, to being able to just use our fingertips, to just telling the phone to make a call. They're millions of years beyond that, but it looked very logical to me, what I saw.
Wow. Now, I know that from previous conversations that we've had, that it didn't take long for the federal government to find out your secret.
It is something I didn't tell you, though.
Those little buggers found you.
Yeah.
What did you not tell me?
What I didn't tell you is, when I was really young, before I went to kindergarten, I was given an experimental vaccine. It was not explained to my mother that it was experimental, but we know that it was experimental because it no longer exists. So interestingly enough, what the vaccine was supposed to do was to make it so I would never have cavities. And I have never had any dental work aside from having my wisdom teeth taken out, and I'm not a spring chicken. So obviously the vaccine worked. All of my other siblings have, had cavities, had root canals, they've had extensive dental work. So whatever they gave me, it did work. And when I went to go to college, you know how you have to go back to your pediatrician, you need your lists of vaccines and immunizations. Well, no surprise, my childhood records were gone. There were no childhood records for me to give to the college to prove that I had any immunizations. And then when I was in my 20s, I went to a doctor that was just down the road from the pediatrician. And then when I went to move after that, I said, can I please have my medical records, I'm moving and I want them. And they said, no. And I said, oh, okay, you just want to send them to my doctor? And they said, no. And so I literally, medically, I do not exist up until, until like maybe I was in my 30s. There's no medical records for me. And so that is suspicious because everyone else in my family went to these same doctors. They're within walking distance of this house. So yeah, and I always wondered why, if that was part of the reason why the government kind of kept their eye on me, because they knew like I had this vaccine. Like, do they keep track of those kids? I mean, I'll never know.
I'm surprised it happened to you because this kind of stuff happened to me all the time, but I was in the system.
Oh, really?
Because the first time my mother was always trying to escape. I was one of 7 kids. She was always trying to get away from a violent situation. So one time we were staying at the Mothers and Children's Home. I think it was somewhere in Oregon. And, the doctors would come in looking to give inspections, physical checkups of the children. So we were getting all kinds of shots and things at Mothers and Children's Home. And then when you're in the foster, then from there, I had the foster care experience. Sure thing, the doctors come. So who knows what the heck they were doing? I mean, hopefully,
right?
Thank God my teeth are terrible. So obviously that
you didn't get that one right.
I didn't get that. I wish I had, but because it's a lot of money I'm going to have to spend. But I think the MK Ultra experiments, vulnerable children. There was also they were also changing the genders of children. Also, I mean, there's been lawsuits about that, ambiguous sexuality, and
Yeah. See, I didn't get any of that. What happened to me was when I was in 8th grade, they gave us all a test, and the 12 of us that got the highest scores, we got invited to join a computer class, and I was really excited. I really loved computers. And, this was like just at the time that people were getting computers in their homes and in the classrooms. And they said that they were going to teach us.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that the first time that you had an interaction where you felt the feds somehow found out that you could do this stuff. And that was when you were 12 years old?
14. I was in 8th grade. And I was really excited because it got me out of gym class. My mom had to sign the permission slip, but you know what? It got me out of because I did ballet. I hated gym. And so I was like, great, I get to learn about computers and I don't have to go running around after a ball. This is fantastic. Except when the class started, there was no teaching and there was no computers. So obviously there was something else going on there. And what they kept asking us was questions about the future. What do we see happening in the future? And so the project that I personally was working on would become Wikipedia, even though Wikipedia was developed by somebody in the private sector. So it just makes me wonder, did they take this information, or was it more just to get it in the collective consciousness where, like almost like the Akashic Records, something like that, where other people could use this information to develop it on their own? Because I certainly did not have anything to do with Wikipedia when everything's said and done, but that was the project I worked on when I was 14.
Wow. And you said you saw a lot of stuff during that time. Like they sent you to places. Can you talk a little bit about where you were sent?
They did finally give us some computers, and they did take us to a computer museum.
So was this the early experiments that the feds were doing into remote viewing using children? But you had agreed.
No, that came a little bit later. That was when I was 18. So yeah, with this, I guess like once they notice you can't really ever escape them. So they really didn't do anything with me for a few years. And then the strangest thing happened. Now, I had applied to a college. I was accepted, but I had to go for a ballet audition because I still wanted to continue to do ballet when I was in college. And so I go to the ballet audition, which is like just on a random day. My eldest sister took me. And when I was done, the dean of the English department was inviting my sister and I over to her house for dinner. And I just knew this didn't feel right. And I said no, but my sister said yes. And she explained to me in the car that, this is a compliment. I should be flattered. And I'm like, but why me and why only me? Like, this doesn't feel right. And not to say this woman wasn't pleasant. She was, and she didn't harm me in any way. But I also could sense, because I've always been intuitive, I could sense that she had a hidden agenda. And she did. And so come to find out, this is the one thing I can say that may surprise some people when it comes to remote viewing with the government. You don't get whisked off to the Pentagon or to Area 51. It is actually in the colleges and universities. I was never taken to some strange building. It's always been where I'm at. And the strange thing is, so after having this experience, so I did start my freshman year of college doing remote viewing, learning it. And I sort of just wanted to be left alone at the same time. So I actually went from a private university to a public one, thinking, well, they're just targeting the private ones. They're smaller, they're easier. They found me right away. And they made me an offer to give me 10 credits to just continue this program that I'd been doing with the remote viewing. And they put me in another think tank. I've done a lot of think tanks for the government, and I've done a lot of remote viewing. And, if you look it up, I know that the government says that they no longer have like remote viewers, or they do remote viewing. What they mean is they don't have, like, say, a dedicated department in the Pentagon. But they do have people like me that does it through contracts. Because what happened was, in the 60s, there was a Russian man that defected over here that had proof, tangible proof, that the Russians were psychically spying somehow on the Americans. And the Americans knew that the Russians had information that they shouldn't have had. And this man actually did know the system and like how it worked. And so that's kind of how it was born. It was born out of the 60s, and it's gone a long ways though. I would say nowadays it doesn't look a whole lot like it did in the 60s, but because now it's like, it's gone from just gathering intel to manipulating and changing the targets to actually, you can do healing work. I won't do anything that would harm anyone, but there are those that do. You can try to change the outcome. So it's a lot of like mind control, sort of things too.
Sometimes wonder, because I use HCRV. I use the heart center.
Right.
I don't know how you feel about HCRV, but I feel like in a way some people think it's manipulative because it's mostly third and fourth chakra, but I don't know. I feel, well, I have mixed feelings about what I do for a living, to be honest with you. Because an example is when I was given the target, say I'm given a target of Lindsey Graham. And if you're doing HCRV, if you do it correctly, you're supposed to become the target, right? You're supposed to be one with their third and fourth chakra. So it's what I feel when I am Lindsay. This is how I feel. It's like I did a remote viewing a couple of days ago, Andrew Cuomo. Did you see what he said to us? I mean, no. But he was like, yeah, he was just very out there. He was very honest about women. He loves women, older women. He doesn't like kids. He likes divorced women. He said divorce. He said, I like divorced, single, and everything in the middle. So
interesting.
So my ethical issue is always, as an HCRV person, I'm aware of the sacredness of that. I'm aware of the sacredness because they may just be praying. They may be in church praying.
Sure.
I believe is how I made contact with Michael Cohen. I think he was praying. I think he was in jail praying and felt a comforting energy and it was me or maybe other people too. Who knows how many people. Sure. are floating around getting information. So you do get the ethical, and then you get all the data, and then you cut the cord, and then they just feel the energy dissipate, and they don't know that I've just done my job. They know that they had an awakening and that they had a spiritual experience and that they talked and confessed and they had this. They don't know that somebody was in there doing something. Now that goes close to what you're talking about, the new forms of remote viewing.
Similar, yeah.
Argue that we are manipulating, and then I cut cords and say, "Thank you, Michael Cohen, for letting us know about this." And then so is that morally? Because some people feel that there's a moral aspect to remote viewing, which particularly like that type, where
right,
gray area. How do you justify it?
See, with military remote viewing, I don't know where I'm going. So you just get an encoded message that's a bunch of letters and numbers. It's been infused psychically. You connect psychically to it, and that's where you go. So, it's not like you know where you're going before you get there. But if you have somebody standing over you that is the person that infused it, or like some sort of a manager, then they could say, okay, yes, you have the correct target, and now this is what we're going to do. But I think a good example is probably what happened with the stock of GameStop. I think that was the name of a GameStop that went through the roof. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of military remote viewers who make a great living just reviewing the stock market, cryptocurrency, because the idea with remote viewing is that we live in a multiverse and there is no one right outcome because there's so many different realities. We have parallel lives going on. Mm-hmm. But if you can see that something is a possibility, like for the stock of GameStop to go through the roof, if that's a possibility, now you can manipulate the stock market to make it happen. But if it's never a possibility, then you're not going to waste your time and money. So that's why people would hire someone for something like that, because they're trying to manipulate their future in some way, usually for a financial gain. A lot of times archaeologists will hire remote viewers because they're looking at the ocean. They know that an ancient civilization lived somewhere around these parts, but it costs a lot of money to go into the ocean and dig. So they use remote viewers to get the longitude.
I love those kinds of clients. That's fun stuff. But
yeah, so they want longitudes and latitudes, and but yeah, I mean, you always have to worry about ethics. But the way I have been trained, it's that it's very impersonal, and you don't usually get validation of who it is or what it is that you're validating until long afterwards, if at all. In some cases, you never. If it's the government that's doing it, you'll never get validation. But if it's a client, you probably would.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's double blind.
It's completely blind, yeah.
I have two questions about that. The first question is, can you tell us a little bit about some of the places you were sent? Can you give a little bit more detail about that without, you don't want to put anybody at risk, but can you tell about what you actually saw, the places you went to?
I think some of the more interesting ones, but they're also a little scary, are the religious artifacts. So looking at the Shroud of Turin and looking at the origins of it, I did do a completely blind remote viewing on that. And that clearly wasn't Jesus, and it clearly wasn't Pontius Pilate that was there. What I saw was a man that was being punished for sport, for entertainment. And he was not clear thinking. There was something wrong with his thinking. Either he had mental issues or he was drugged, because he was not in his right mind. He did appear to be Middle Eastern. And I do think it was probably in a similar area where Jesus was, but a very, very different person. And I could see the person that was putting him to death, because he was there really enjoying it. He was very sick. It was very twisted. He was laughing maniacally. He was really enjoying this. This is what he did for fun. And so that was just a really sick experience. But also, too, anything that remotely involves the Vatican, you get egregores. Even though the Vatican has never come right out and said, yes, this is Jesus, because they can't. They know that it's not, so they won't. because they have their own remote viewers, first of all. But they do protect it with egregores. And for those that you don't know, egregores are thought forms. They're beings. They don't have a soul. They are created sort of like through magic, but it's more of like an energy working. And they are tasked with something. And so with like anything that's religious, they're tasked with keeping people away. And so they will beat you up. I mean, it's not pleasant. They usually cause pain in my right ear. They will sometimes give you nosebleeds. They'll drain your energy because they're just trying to get you away. The other interesting one was the Ark of the Covenant. I did do that one.
Well, I was going to just say before we do that, it reminds me of Joy's Way, the book, where he studied with Tibetans, and they would create thought forms to teach him how to use energy. And one of the thought forms that the Tibetan monks did is they created demons to protect the monasteries, and the demons were kept around as pets by the monastics. So the demons actually never really hurt anyone. They were just like dogs running around, going spooky, spooky, and scaring, because people would.
The deterrents, yes.
They would try to break into the monastery on the top of the hill. So they had these spooky demons they would create that would be seen by people, and they would become frightened. And then sometimes they would break up the energy and disperse it, and then create another demon. So it's definitely a cross-cultural phenomenon, this ability to create thought forms and to create energies.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So you were going to tell another story about that?
Oh, yeah. So the Ark of the Covenant, that was a strange one. I did not know what I was viewing. So I was totally blind. And I remember writing on the paper, microwave ? Because it was giving off some sort of energy. And it's not insulated properly. That is like the biggest thing that I got from it, was that it gives off some sort of energy like a microwave, but it's not insulated properly. So if you're around it, you're going to get sick. Which, if you look at the Ethiopians, those monks that claim that they have it, they protect it, they do all go blind.
What is this?
The Ark of the Covenant, it's allegedly in Ethiopia.
All right.
And, those monks all go blind. And if they truly do have what I saw, it actually makes sense. And what I'm assuming it is that it is like advanced technology that these people wouldn't have had. And I think that's how we get the stories of manna from heaven, that it actually was able to make food quickly. And this was just technology that was far beyond anything that they had. But it does look dangerous at the same time. It is giving off this energy that isn't healthy for a human.
Wow, how interesting. Almost like they found some uranium or something.
Yeah, really bizarre, but it is like in a box. It would be like, I don't know, the way I looked at it was like finding a very old primitive microwave. Because I think it could make food, and I think that's where we get the stories manna from heaven, that it was able to make food a lot quicker than what they would have been able to make. But it just isn't safe, and it's nothing like, it's made out of materials that they just wouldn't have had. It was nothing like that, like they had back in those days.
So what do you think it was?
I think it was extraterrestrial technology that they got their hands on.
Huh.
That's what it seemed like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Dianne. So now we're getting to the second part of this, the nitty gritty, and we're going to start.
Oh, no.
I want to know your predictions. First things first, Harry and Meghan. I thought they were going to go. The second was going to be a boy because I got an Ace of Wands. Turns out it's a girl. I'm hoping they'll name her Diana.
Oh, that would be beautiful.
What was interesting when I went into the energy on Harry is I got all the emotions right. HCRVs, we can get real accurate about what was freaky for me. I'll tell you what was freaky for me about Harry and the Meghan interview is that when I had done the remote to put myself in the shoes of Harry, I found myself sitting across from my brother William and saying, it's time for you to stand up for the values that you were raised with. And then I heard myself say, you have a real opportunity here to change.
Mm-hmm.
You're now in a position of power where you can actually do some stuff. So it was interesting in the interview with Oprah, Harry said, yeah, you know, you have a real opportunity. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Validation.
He says it, then the remote viewer says it because they heard it in the remote view. Then the person repeats it on Oprah, and then people hear it. I said, oh, yeah, I heard Whimsy say that. So for me, it's not just validating, it's bigger than that. I joke about my ego, but the truth of the matter is it's really not, I really don't have a lot of ego about it. But what I am excited about is just the unity of the human mind. It blows my mind that we are so much more empathetic than we give ourselves credit for if we would just open ourselves.
Sure. And there is a collective consciousness that we all tap into, I believe.
Yeah. So what's your predictions for Harry and Meghan? You think they're going to make it? I hope so.
I have only looked at them for like about 5 years out, and I do see them together. And what I've always gotten is that William will become king, and I do feel like William's going to be the last. I think they're going to just move away from the monarchy after this. I just have never seen them continuing it. And I think that they're in for a lot of changes. And I think he's going to ask Harry to come back. But I think it's going to be under very different circumstances. I think a lot of these older people in the royal family will have passed. And they're going to allow for more modern thinking.
I think it's exactly what's going to happen. I think that people in the institution that control the monarchy's reputation are eugenicists, right-wing racist, and they work with people who own the media who are also right-wing racist, and together they're propping up this institution. And I think those people are going to be fired and removed. I think that what they did was very bad for Britain and the Commonwealth, because this was, Harry was right. They had a real opportunity to have somebody representing the royal family that looked like the Commonwealth, and they blew it. And so I predict that they will please come back again once they clean up the disaster. And I think that because, look, Harry's very involved. When you go into the remotes, he's very concerned about education, equality, mental health, particularly in early years, childhood. So yeah, and he knows what he's doing. He's actually quite a strong man. I think he'll be, please come back. But
yes, I think he's going to go back with conditions.
Yeah, I want to move
on.
So
funny. Okay.
The reason I wanted to talk about it at all was because it had to do with, you know, it was relevant to today's news. But anyway, so the other thing that people want to talk about has to do with this shift in the economy, because oil is dead. People are freaking out because the market is all over the place. People honestly don't know where to put their money. People are scared. Have you seen anything for the future in terms of the economy and what's happening?
Well, yeah, it's going to get much worse before it gets better. And so the person that I would say to watch is Andrew Yang, because eventually we are going to get a basic income. A lot of these jobs aren't coming back, and we're going to start replacing some of the like service type jobs, because we saw how hard it was to keep them going in a pandemic. And so you can, you know, use automation for a lot of things. And I'm not saying that it's right, but that is what I'm seeing. And so what I think is, yes, it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I'm seeing that it's going to eventually be much better in the end, because there will be this basic income, because we're going to force these billionaires and trillionaires to actually pay taxes. And that's all that has to happen. All they have to do is pay taxes and we'll be okay.
Pay taxes.
There's no reason.
And stop hiding your money overseas. If you look
exactly.
I did, you know, it was all about the money, chasing the money overseas, hiding it in cryptocurrencies, hiding it in That's our money. That's money that's supposed to be taxed. It's stolen. It's stolen from us.
Right. Absolutely. And they, I mean, how many billions of dollars do you need before you can feel complete and whole? You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. That whole way of thinking doesn't resonate with me, especially knowing that some of your workers, you know, like when we think about the Walmart employees, They don't even make a living wage, and so they have to get, supplemental benefits, foods. What do they call it? SNAP, the food
Yeah,
benefits,
which
and
comes out of my pocket and your pocket. So we
exactly.
to cover the cost because Walmart, we have to pay Walmart wages because
Yes,
they don't want to pay their workers. I think it's absolutely absurd. It's
it
ridiculous.
truly is, and no other country has this issue. They just slightly raise their prices at the fast food restaurants and whatnot, and it just means that the CEOs make a little less. We're not asking them to make a lot less, just a little less, so the rest of the world can survive.
I think that I don't agree with that. I think they should make a lot less. I don't know if there's any function to be a billionaire. It serves no function. It's
I
actually
don't know, like,
because
what,
people become amoral. What I've seen,
right?
I mean, that's what I took away from when I did the remotes on Epstein.
Mm,
Why Epstein was like rolling his eyes during the deposition. You're a freaking cockroach. Do you have any idea who I am? I don't have to
right.
live by the rules. These people don't live by the rules. They're above
It's
the.
scary, right?
So that whole we just want 1 cent. I want more than 1 cent. You shouldn't be a billionaire. You should pay your workers. It's not your money. It's your workers' money. They're the ones that
True.
brought you the money through their work. So pay your damn workers, pay your taxes. This whole fantasy, like, oh, when I die, I'll give you my money. The whole billionaire pledge, it's a joke. You don't have to do the billionaire pledge. All you have to do is pay your
No,
taxes and pay your workers. And
exactly.
after you do those two things, you can give 10, 20% to charity, like I and everybody else do.
Sure.
Really
Like the
want.
rest of us do. Yeah.
All right. So that's enough of us ranting about the economy. Oh my God. Okay. So the next thing is the pandemic. People want to know, when will this nightmare end? Will things go back to normal? What do you think, Diane?
Um, I really get like a really nice sense around June of like more normalcy. Like most people will be vaccinated by that time. Um, I am a little bit concerned that a little bit more might come back of the pandemic. I don't know. I'm feeling something, and I haven't spent enough time with it yet to see what it is that I'm feeling. But I do feel like, or there's just another zoonotic disease waiting because the way that we're treating farmed animals. I mean, there's zoonotic diseases all over this planet because of how we're treating farmed animals. Take the African swine flu. If a pig gets that, it is 100% deadly.
That's right.
There is nothing that they can give the pig to save the pig's life. If that jumps to humans, okay, now we have a problem.
It will
But
jump.
we want to eat pigs, but we want to keep eating them. So that means that we got to cram them together so they all get sick, and then we keep eating that meat. And so we have to do something to treat these animals better, because I am seeing something else coming back. I don't know if it's this or if it's another one, but I don't think we're going to break free from having these zoonotic diseases unless we change something.
Yeah, I agree. I think that factory meat is going extinct. I think that it's all going to become,
Great.
I think it's all going to just be lab grown. It's the same.
Yes.
It's not frankincense. That's the other thing. It's not frankincense. It's
Yeah,
the same
it,
cells. That's what we
it
want.
is.
It's the same DNA. It's just being fermented. If you don't want to eat the chicken that's fermented, the chicken is still alive and well, by the way, people.
Right.
The people that invented this, the chicken is their pet, by the way, the people out of San Francisco. But my point is that this is where we're headed. You don't have to eat meat. Like, I don't eat meat. I mean,
No,
I've got
I
these
don't.
new heritage. Have you tried heritage bird eggs, by the way? They're delicious.
No.
They're not genetically modified. They're called the heritage birds. And
Interesting.
they're what our ancestors ate, but then they got genetically Frankensteined. So anyway, I'm having these beautiful heritage eggs, and you can get them from no kill. We all over Portland, we have farms that are no kill, and you can see they call their chickens the ladies. The ladies are coming with it. It's great. So there's humane ways to
Right.
do these things.
And you don't want to ingest all that negativity, especially if you want to do this kind of work. If you want to get accurate information and you want to make sure that you are only channeling and working with good beings, with angels and your guides. You don't want to have lower vibrations, and when you eat something that, this animal has suffered from, from the day it was born, you're consuming that and it becomes part of you and it's lowering your vibration.
I
And
agree with that. Yeah.
there's healthier ways of doing it. I've been a vegetarian since I was 14 and I've been vegan since I was 30.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do well on the vegan diet. Even from an Ayurvedic perspective, I'm what you call Vata. So, but I have a lot of Pitta in me too, if you're talking about just body types. But I've actually, my body has now adapted to being a vegetarian. And I think
It will.
yeah, it took about a year. I'm very comfortable with it now. I don't crave animal products. They kind of creep you out after a while.
They do.
But I still do eggs and dairy. I still do, and it's something you evolve into. Who knows where I'll be a year from now? But I'm holding.
Right. I think a lot of people try to go into it, no pun intended, cold turkey. And, it's like any diet. Do it the right way. Make, a doctor or a nutritionist, part of this as you go through it. Because if not, what happens is you end up eating a lot of carbs because you're hungry, because you're not getting enough protein. So you eat carbs and then you gain weight and then you get put on the cycle. So there is a right way of doing it.
Yeah, well, that's a conversation for another day, but I agree with you.
Right.
Dianne, I had so much fun and I have so many more questions, but we've already gone for
like an hour.
So I think we're going to, will you come back again? Can I interview you again?
Absolutely. This was a blast.
Oh, I really loved it. And if you're trying to get in for a reading with Dianne, you can check her out at DianneAquarius.com, DianneAquarius.com, and her YouTube channel is Dianne's Tarot, and you'll be seeing me there because I watch it every chance I get.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, everybody. And be sure and share, like, subscribe, and click the bell notification if you haven't done so yet for this channel. And also be sure and check out Dianne's Tarot. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.